Hello everyone, I'm Sumaya Sayed, an international medical graduate who's currently working in Australia as a doctor with general registration. In today's video, I will be discussing about how I prepared for my AMC MCQ examination, the tips and tricks that worked for me, and how I managed to ace the exam with only 3 months of preparation. Before we get into more details, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with all the friends that you feel will need this kind of help throughout their journey to become a qualified doctor in Australia. I've tried to research a bit and I found the following content online. As you can see, the US MLE Step 1 has a passing rate of 83%. The UK PLAB examination, the PLAB 1, has a passing rate of 76%, and the AMC MCQ examination, from the data available online a couple of years back, had a passing percentage of 58%. So that's a lot of difference between all these examinations, and that's why we also say that AMC is one of the most difficult examinations to crack through. I think the main reason is that we don't know where to study from. There is no specific source or no particular notes for each subject that you know that if you follow, there's a high chance for you to pass. There is no course that is a go-to course that you can go to and you know that you're passing. So it's basically a lot of that confusion around where to study from, what to do, how to start about with it, that probably causes this low rate of passing. For everyone who's new here and is just about to start, what is AMC examination? So AMC examination is an Australian Medical Council exam that is given in 2 parts. The first part is MCQ based, and that is part 1, the one that we're going to be speaking about, and the other one, part 2, is clinical examination. So for part 1 examination, it's a 3.5-hour long exam. It is divided into 150 questions. The distribution of the questions goes something like 30% for medicine, 20% for surgery, and obstetrics, pediatrics, psychiatry, population health, all are 12.5% each. And that is how the questions are divided in your examination. Let's dive into how I prepared for my examination and hope it helps. It is in no way the gold standard and I wouldn't expect all of you to follow, but I think for those that this works for, I think it'll be amazing for you guys to go ahead with this sort of a plan. My first ever step was to get a target or a goal that I wanted to achieve, and I think I work really well when I am under pressure and when I know what I have to do by what date. So I decided in March that I would book my examination, and I booked my examination for June that year. I think it was the best decision because now I knew how I had to time it, even though I was working full-time for an online platform from here to India. So the timings did not match and all of that, but I did try and squeeze in as much time to get a study schedule and everything, and worked around that. So first decision was to book an exam on a date that I found reasonable for me. The next thing I did was I started with the handbook, because the handbook, as we all know, is something that is recommended by the AMC itself. So that is in one of the recommendations. I did go through it just to find out what we're expecting in the examinations, what kind of questions are there, and depending on where you've studied from, it's going to be very, very different from where you studied from. It's not going to be exactly the same. So if you feel that it's a very similar kind of MCQ based examination and it's just nothing, it's absolutely quite different, because I did try to solve a lot of those questions with a few of my colleagues back in India, back in Russia, back in the UK, and a lot of the answers, none of them could go through. So you really need to know the pattern to try and figure out what the answer for that question is and know the right resources to study. I started with 30 questions per day and then realized that it's very few questions to complete in one single day, but with the handbook you're also reading the questions and then trying and reading all the explanations to every option in that question. I slowly increased the pace to 80 questions per day. And I took another week and completed the handbook once again, and this time in just 5 days. And I'm sure a lot of you are on the AMEDEX Facebook page. If you're not there, I think it would be ideal to find some friends on Facebook, ask them to add you on the AMEDEX group, because I think that was very, very helpful for me. A lot of people posted how they prepared, and all of those things kind of helped me. Another thing that I did was I took the AMEDEX subscription. So there are a few question banks, but someone advised that they've used AMEDEX and it worked well for them, so I did that. And I think it was one of the best decisions, because what I did was I went through the questions, I solved the question, and then I would go back to the answers, find where I was lacking, and even if my answers were correct, I would still read all the explanations that were mentioned there, and they were always constantly updated. So I think it really, really helped me. Again, I started with 30 to 40 questions per day, but then I would go on to 120 questions for some of the subjects that interested me, and sometimes I would stay up late just kind of reading through all the options and understanding why this was not the correct answer or why this was the correct answer. Along with the handbook or the AMEDEX that I did back during those days, I also started monthly recalls around mid-May or so, because my exam was in the later part of June or the middle of June, I don't remember, but I started in mid-May. I started with monthly recalls, so every day I found a group of study mates which were amazing. I think our timings matched with each other. The way we speak to each other was really helpful. The way we spoke to each other was really helpful. I'm still in touch with them, and I found some really great buddies that I could study with. What we would do is we would quickly do the recalls monthly, and the questions that we felt that we didn't know the answers for, we either gave each other the task to find out that answer and come back in the evening, or plan to meet the next afternoon or something over a video call, and then quickly discussed in short what they thought the answer was and what was the reasoning behind that. So going back to these things, what I also want to let you know is just solving recalls is not the only helpful thing. I think what is also helpful is every time you solve a recall, go back to a bit of theory for that recall, because not always, and I realized this during my exam, that a lot of things were not exactly the same as recalls. And the recalls, when you read the first question, you felt like, oh, I've read this and I know what the answer is, but the options would be completely different from what you've already learned or what you've already seen. So don't completely rely on the recalls. At the end of the day, they're just recalls. That means someone is trying to recall what they have solved in the exam. But I think it really, really helped me get through a lot of things. The reading part, the theoretical part that I went back to once when I was doing my recalls with my study mates. Towards the mid-May, I kept thinking that I want to postpone my exam, because you get a chance to postpone your exam when it comes to AMC MCQ examination. And then I spoke to a few people, when you get too anxious, when you get too worried, and you have that fear of failure. And for people who have not failed, and even for people who have failed in the past, I think it's a very overwhelming feeling to think that you're going to fail an exam, especially an exam in which you're going to be paying so much and you don't want to fail it. For those people who have not started working in Australia at all, I think it's a very huge amount, and for me as well, it was a very huge amount, and I thought that why not postpone it for a month. But then I spoke to a few people. Those people told me that, look, I've passed the exam and I felt exactly the same. So it's just not a good thing to keep postponing, because even after a month, you're going to feel exactly the same. So no matter what spot you're in, you may feel like you want to keep postponing the exam. But for me, it was a good decision that I didn't end up postponing the exam, because that saved me a month or two, but it also gave me more confidence in myself that I probably think that I'm not prepared, but I am actually quite prepared. Again, I did study or revise my stuff with a few people who had postponed their exam, who kept postponing their exams, and we all felt basically in the group that I think you will pass this exam because you're doing so well, and they were probably doing much better than me as well at that point. But they just kept thinking that no, I'm not prepared enough. And then I know of a few people who have even postponed the exam for 8 to 9 months from the initial date that they had decided, and still at the end they were quite overwhelmed. Of course they did pass, but what I'm trying to say is find your own time, try and balance. You don't have to book your exam in 3 months. You don't have, it really depends. Some of you might be okay with booking your exam in the next 1 month and prepping for it accordingly, but some of you might feel like booking your exam in a year, and that is completely fine. But know that most of us will not feel prepared no matter how hard we study. Let's talk about the online resources that helped me prep during this exam. If you guys want, just pause the video, take a book and a pen, and you can note down these resources as well. For me, I had taken a subscription of ETG, which is a paid application, and that helped me a lot to find out the Australian way of thinking, to find the accurate evidence-based medicine that is used in Australia. A friend of mine had taken Up to Date, so the things that were not there on ETG, she would just either discuss it with me by making notes of them, or just send me a screenshot that this is what it says on Up to Date, and we would always compare the data and try and figure out the answers for ourselves. Other online resources that helped me a lot was MedBullet for medicine kind of questions, OrthoBullet for anything related to orthopedics, Life in the Fast Lane for ECG. One more very important thing that I did in the last 30 days or so was solving the 100 cases of emergency medicine. Not really solving, but going through them 1 or 2 each day. And that was really helpful as well. Now, all these resources that I'm talking to you about, I'm going to try and post a link to those just below my video. But at the same time, I used a few books that I went back to for questions. For example, Master the Boards is something that I went back to. I went back to Kaplan for psych and pediatric questions. I went back to Llewellyn Jones for obstetrics questions. I went back to John Mortag for some of the general medicine questions, and I think all of these different resources have helped me at some stage. But there were these very quick short notes that I still have on my drive that I used towards the end in the last 5 to 10 days, and that was such an amazing revision for me. I think I probably learned the most from those notes as well. So I will post a link to that in the comment section as well. Yes, I also constantly had a look at RACGP, which is a website in Australia which gives us all the information for different medical related issues, and RCH for any pediatric questions. So these are the online resources. I also went through a lot of YouTube videos from Dirty USMLE for ECG peps. I think one of them was really good. I'll try to find it and post a link. In just that one video, I learned a lot, or revised very quickly about the ECG. It really helped me in the last 5 or 10 days of my prep. For the imaging part of the thing, because some of the questions, as you guys know already, come from the imaging section. So as I said, for ECG, I have used the Dirty USMLE videos that helped me a lot, and I also usually for all the images used the Anthology of Medical Conditions book, and there was something called Masaba files back in the day. I still have it on my drive. You can use it. That helped me a lot in the imaging. So fundoscopes, x-rays, CT scans, and all these things I have downloaded on my drive. You can have a look. Going through these images at least 30 minutes each day for the last 1 month or so is a good thing to get an eye on that image, and to see how the field for the AMC MCQ examination is in terms of images side of the things. What helped me a lot, I believe, or the most that I believe, is the fact that I was always happy to share my knowledge and all my notes and everything with the rest of the people I was studying with. And sometimes I would randomly get a message if I've posted something on Emidex regarding a question, and they would ask me, do you have notes for this or that? And I would happily share with them. And that helped me in a way that I wasn't even expecting, that even before, a day or two before my exam, I had a few other people who had given their exams, and they would call me and share their experience of how the exams went, what kind of questions were there. And I wasn't really expecting a lot of them to share, but some of them were really kind, and they said that we didn't feel like you're not wanting to share any information, and you were so open about everything you're studying from, and you were always sharing your notes and your link and everything with us. So they felt the need of updating me about how the exam went. That gave me a bit of a comfort when I was going for the exam myself. Of course, there were a few people who were a complete opposite, but I can't expect everyone to help me. But I think what I would like you guys to do is, if you've received any help from this video, or if there's a way, a tip or trick that you want to share with people, just don't wait till you give your exam and pass your exam. I think if you found something that you can share with the others, this is not an exam that is competitive. It's not an exam where if someone else passes, you fail. It's just something that you could all pass, and sharing that information is very, very important. I think if I can do it, every one of you can do it. You just have to have that zeal, that passion. There is no excuse, and even the people who have failed, I don't think it was something to do with their intelligence or with their time management. I think it's sometimes also pure luck. Most of us don't know until you get the results that you have passed, because you're always thinking that your papers have not gone well. So don't look down at yourself. Don't be harsh on yourself. It is okay, even if you fail, as long as you don't give up and try again. Every person's situation is different, and I think if I can pass, a lot of you can pass. So that's just something you have to keep in mind, and keep going for what you want in life, and eventually you'll achieve it. Everyone's timeline is going to be different, but you're going to get to a point where you would be helping others. So just wait for that chance. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share it with as many people as possible. Feel free to share your comments, give me an advice on how I can make my videos better, and also pour in your suggestions as to what videos you all want me to make next. I know that some of you want me to make a video on how to start when you're working for the first time in Australia, and what resources would help you, and I'm planning to make a video on that as well. If you have more suggestions, something that interests you, I would love to make a video on that. I'm also planning to make a video on day in the life. I've already made my video on how I got my first job in Australia as a doctor. Hope that helps a lot of people. I know of 2 people who have seen that video and have gotten a job for next year, and have promised that they would share their experience of how they found that job. So I'm just waiting for them to give you guys an update about their journey as well. But if any of these videos have helped you, feel free to comment. It always makes me feel good if I've been able to make a change to anyone's life at all. And yes, if any of you have managed to find a job, if you've cleared your AMC examination, even if it's part 1, I think it's a good idea to share your experience with everyone else, so that everyone else can go through the same journey as yours and continue to improve lives. So all the very best. Feel free to go to the videos which talks about the expenses, which talks about how you should be applying to the RMO campaigns, and again, as I said, if you have any more suggestions, please pour in. Thank you everyone. Have a very nice day. Bye bye. Take care.